Okay, so Tristan, great to have you back on the show. Let's jump right into it and talk about the state of the 2024 presidential race. By the time this interview airs, the debate will have already taken place. My question to you is, how important do you think it is to have this early debate? Because this debate is clearly earlier than I think any debate I could possibly remember. And more importantly, who do you think benefits most from it?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely cannot remember a debate being this early. They usually aren't even, the earliest I can think of them being is September usually, right?
Yeah.
This is really unusual. It's interesting overall. I still don't quite get it. But I think that both sides probably see themselves being able to take advantage of it. I think Trump wants to try to tear down Biden and establish himself more as a better option to people before things get even worse for him. I still believe, I actually just put out a piece about this morning on my Substack, that there's still a lot of peril ahead for him, even in the DC case, because I think even having a hearing on whether some of his actions were official acts will be almost like a trial that will be very devastating for him. I think that he's got a lot of other legal issues ahead of him this year, obviously the sentencing, but I think there's a lot ahead for him. So trying to kind of establish himself and tear down Biden before then is what he's going to be looking to do. I think for Biden, yeah, it's a chance for him. He's been, fairly quiet. They've adopted the attitude that they did back in 2020, which is, I think they are not trying to really push that hard on the campaign trail until they think people are paying attention. I think this was an attempt to try to expand how long people would be paying attention and have a chance for him to define himself ahead of the Republican National Convention in July. I think that both sides have opportunities to score punches here. I still wonder, though, how many people will really be paying attention, but maybe the spectacle of this would get people to pay attention sooner. Traditionally, most voters don't look at any of this stuff until Labor Day. It's only news junkies who really follow it before then. Is this going to be enough to get people to pay attention before the fall? We'll see. It could be.
So my understanding, speaking to media friends, is that they're anticipating this debate to be watched like if it was the Super Bowl. And again, I'm not 100% certain I agree, but I certainly don't disagree. I think Donald once again overplayed his hand. Their ongoing continuous attacks on Biden's acuity, on his mental status. It was really at a rally that Trump turned around and said, I'd love to debate him like right now, thinking that he was going to, impress upon his supporters and the listeners that, Joe Biden is not up to the challenge today. So if Biden's not up to the challenge today, well, it's only going to get worse in 5 months, right? As you get older, you don't get sharper and clearer. You lose more and more of your mental faculty, right? I mean, I'm not saying that he's losing it by much, but my point is that's what Trump was thinking. To which Biden turned around and said, whoa, slow down.
Okay.
Slow down 1 second there, cheeky monkey, because here's the facts. The facts are, I'm not the one that's talking about Hannibal Lecter, the late great Hannibal Lecter, right? I'm not the one talking about the ocean and sinking electric boats.
Sharks and electric boats, yeah.
I mean, it's almost like, it's really kind of funny if you watch it. If it wasn't that this ass clown is running for the presidency of the United States, this is fucking hilarious. I mean, this is almost funny enough to be a South Park episode because he brings in everything. So there I am in the ocean, right? And I'm in a yacht and, powered by batteries. and the boat's going down. So now you have water, you got boats, you got electric boats, you have, right, electrocution. But that's not enough that you're going down in the middle of the ocean. First of all, the guy doesn't know how to swim, wouldn't get his hair wet, so he's going down no matter what. Now all of a sudden, in comes sharks, right?
Now that was a shark too, yeah.
Right, because there were some shark attacks in Florida on the coastline. So now he brings in the sharks, right? And so what else are you going to bring in? You're going to bring in, aliens that are floating around on the side, watching and videotaping this as it happens so that they could intergalactically show this and make a fortune of intergalactic money on it. I mean, you don't know where the guy is coming from, right? All of a sudden, it's going to be like, next thing he's being pelted by old hard sushi that has salmonella in it. I mean, you don't know where this idiot is going to come next. And he's attacking Biden's acuity. The guy who just came back from the G7, who just came back from trying to negotiate Middle Eastern peace, the guy who is out there dealing with our economy, which happens to be the best in the world by 2.5 times our GDP, the guy who's out there trying to, be the president for all Americans, even the ones that are Trump supporters. I'm not really sure that Donald made, or his people made, another blunder here.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think that's a good point. This gives Biden a chance to answer just by showing up and being sharp and landing some punches and being witty. I mean, we saw that the State of the Union.
Yep.
Right. A lot of people thought, where is he? What's he doing? Oh, well, is he losing his touch? Whatever. And he turns in a total tour de force. And even in his sort of unscripted moments, like when all of a sudden he runs into Marjorie Taylor Greene and gives that like surprised face that ended up turning into a meme. Like he did great the whole time. So I think it's going to give him a chance to show up and show that he's just fine. And also it's going to give him a chance to tout his record as opposed to the fear mongering around it. Trump wants to run around talking about inflation and crime. Both of them are way down.
Yep.
And they're and crime's now back to being lower than it was during the Trump administration. We're back down to like below pre-COVID levels. COVID caused a blip in the crime rate. Things are not perfect by any stretch, but they're certainly not as bad as Trump's making them out to be. And then inflation was bad for a time because of oil, really.
Yep.
And that's been brought under control too. And Biden did all of these amazing things to make a whole bunch of money while rebuilding our oil surplus, I was reading. So there's going to be a lot of stuff that he can tout. It gives Biden an opportunity.
Sure, but let's not forget that Biden did this in a bipartisan manner, which goes to show
he had to.
A leader. Again, where I think that Trump made a terrible, terrible mistake in terms of pushing it. Not only do we know that Biden is going to do just fine on the debate stage, Donald himself knows that Biden is going to do well, which is why he's now talking about how Biden is going to be coked up on whether it's cocaine or Adderall. He's going to be ramped up on Red Bull or some other sort of power drink because they're going to have him sleeping for a few days so that he has his energy to do that. I mean, Donald himself knows how stupid it was to push this as early as he's doing. And so now they have to come up with all these different excuses. And it's not just excuses about Biden. He's making excuses already for himself. He's turning around, Jake Tapper and Dana Bash are going to be horrible to me, right? They're going to, they're going to attack me and so on. My understanding from people on the inside meaning the Trump campaign, people who are actually with him, trying to help him to prep. Donald has zero attention for anything. That's why he's asking them, give me bullet points. One, during this debate, you cannot come in with pre-scripted notes. All you get is a pen and a pad. There's going to be no audience. which Donald feeds off of.
Right.
On top of that, all right, and by the way, he used to stack the audience, so whatever he said, if he would
Right.
take a von Schützen pants in his pants, all of a sudden the crowd under that Donald Trump brought would start to applaud and cheer him, right? That's not there, and he's very good at trying to control the environment, but once they cut the mics, that's another, these rules do not benefit Donald Trump. In fact, I think that these rules are going to really, truly benefit Joe Biden. But let's see if these predictions come true.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, one of the things we have to remember here also is that even though he's been in national politics for more than 8 years now, going back to 2015, Donald Trump is still not a very experienced politician in a lot of ways, weirdly. Whereas Joe Biden has been in elected office since the 70s. He's been through a lot of debates, and he ran for president 2 times before he ultimately won, right? So he's been through a lot more like traditional political debates than Donald Trump has. Biden was in the Senate for all those years. He knows how to debate people. And he's going to have a lot more experience to fall back on. Trump, I think you're totally right. Trump is much more happy in more of a town hall format, where he gets to play to the crowd and try to get them on his side. And it gives him something to do. Like, you give him a crowd, it actually brings out the most, unfortunately, charismatic part of him. I think if he just has a bunch of cameras and a couple of journalists he doesn't like and his opponent, I don't think that's going to bring out that's not going to bring out his best.
Yeah, especially.
So I think you're right.
Especially if Biden is attacking him, calling him a stable genius, making fun of Hannibal. Oh, well, maybe you could, why don't you pick up the phone and call a friend like Hannibal Lecter, right? I mean, that's what Joe Biden really needs to do. Can I ask you this, though? Because, Tristan, you've said that Donald Trump has a weird confessional tell that shows that he's embarking on wrongdoing. Now, I know Trump probably better than anybody. I'm curious. What do you think that tell is?
This is my theory. I'm very curious to hear what you think of this, but I just think it's very interesting that why did he need to sign the checks to you? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, he could have had Weisselberg sign those checks. And then why did he sign the checks? The only other time I've ever seen him sign any check otherwise was in the Trump University case, where he signed the checks for payments to himself. And again, he didn't need to sign those checks either.
By the way,
and as you and I both...
No, Tristan, got to stop you there. Donald signed every single check. He spent hours a day signing checks. The only checks that Alan Weisselberg was allowed to sign were things like the AT&T phone bill or any check that was under.
That's what I was seeing a lot in my case was, Okay.
No. And in fact, with the Trump University case, you may recall that there were about 100 vendors that didn't get paid.
There were a lot.
Ultimately,
that's right.
Ultimately resigned with each and every one of them. Not only did Donald sign all of those checks as well, right? He signed off on all of the releases on behalf of him. He signed everything. In fact, I even have, because of properties that I owned that were Trump properties, like a Trump Palace or a Trump World Tower, and so on. He signs all the contracts to sale. He signs all day long, sign. But again, I want to go back to it. What do you see as the weird confessional tell?
Well, no, it looks like I'm wrong, but it's wrong in a good way, because it shows that he really was, as you and I both know, very hands-on with any large sums of money going into and out of his businesses. He was very hands-on. So I'm wrong, but it's actually a good thing, because it just shows he was that involved with this stuff. There's no way that he was engaging in this entire payment scheme and he wasn't personally involved in it. There's no way that the dollar figures that flowed to you would have gone out the door without him knowing all of it and having total control and sign off over it.
By the way, every single person who testified, from McConney
said
to,
that. Everybody.
Hope Hicks to, Weisselberg in the past and so on. Donald Trump is a micromanager. He was involved in everything, including the purchasing of pens or paper clips. Everything.
Yeah.
No, I'm not joking. Like literally everything ran through him and his desk.
Yep. So why I had that impression, Michael, was because in the Trump U case, we were dealing with it was Trump University. It wasn't the Trump org. It was Trump University doing a lot of payments to different vendors. And what we saw in the documents that we reviewed was 99.9% Alan Weisselberg signatures, and the only ones that we saw Trump sign himself were him withdrawing profits from the business to pay himself. But now what you're saying, it makes much more sense, because the other expenses that we were seeing them pay for Trump University were much more garden variety, and therefore fell on Allen's side of the aisle. That makes more sense.
Yeah. So
that's interesting.
So let me
I didn't know.
We'll call it some tells and ticks. If in fact that if he was a poker player. There's always people who say, how do you know that Donald Trump is lying? His lips are moving. No. That may also be true as well. But accordion hands. The next time that you watch him turn around and start going with accordion hands, notice how this all happens. So, he'll turn around and there'll be a topic. And let's say, let's even use the hush money case.
Yep.
All of a sudden, he realized he comes to a pause, and it's an apparent pause. And he sort of takes a big breath, and he hunkers down, right? And then out come the accordion hands. Many smart people, professors, smart people who know the law, who are constitutional experts, are all saying that this case has no validity. And he goes on and on with the accordion.
Right.
You see, he knows he's lying. What he's doing is it's almost like a magician, right? A sleight of hand. He's distracting you with the hands. But for him, it is an absolute tell that whatever he's saying is a lie. The next time you watch him in a rally, and when, of course, he starts talking about the words like all, every, no, it's not true. Every constitutional law professor in America does not agree with Donald on that. Really? Yeah.
Really? Yeah.
I'm pretty sure about that one. In fact, I'm willing to even put money bet on that one. Just the next time, and I want my audience as well, the next time you see the Mandarin Mussolini up on a stand, whether it's going to be the debate or it's going to be any of these rallies, listen to the words that he says, and especially listen to the words he says when accordion hands come into play.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me move on and ask you this. Do you think that Trump's 34 felony convictions in this hush money, I hate calling it the hush money case. That's sort of a name that was given to it by media. It's business record fraud and campaign finance violation. That's what it is.
I like to call it the campaign cover-up case. That's what I like to call it.
There you go. So do you think that Trump's 34 felony convictions in that case will affect the outcome of the election in any way? Because according to polls, and I don't think much of polls, right? You may remember my Says Who, where I was absolutely right about it. Thus far, his conviction here hasn't moved the needle, according to some of these polls, even though we're seeing now a 4-5 point swing in Biden's favor. Yes, that moves the polls, but I would have expected, and I still believe, that these 34 felony convictions, when it's election day, is going to have a much greater impact on the result than what these bullshit polls are saying. What's your thoughts?
I agree with that. So I had Rick Wilson on my podcast
He's great.
a couple weeks ago, and he was sharing. And I know he's been talking about this a bunch of places. You know, the Lincoln Project does all of its own polling, and he was sharing. And of course, their big push, of course, is as folks know, is to go dislodge more moderate or loyal or constitutional Republicans and get them to either vote for a Democrat or to at least leave it blank or stay home. That's their mission, right? And so they're hyper focused on that sliver of the electorate that are Republicans but are persuadable to not vote for Trump. And they believe that the percentage of Republicans who are now in that camp has risen from like 9% for the midterms to, and they saw people be willing to not vote for a Republican for Congress, to 13 to 22% of the Republican electorate, they believe is now.
Have you ever wished that you had whiter and a brighter smile? Well, before you visit a dentist, you should know that their whitening treatments, they're very expensive. And you know what? It's not just the price. You also have to book the appointment, schedule time away from work or family to sit in a dentist's office chair while undergoing this procedure. It's a hassle. Fortunately, now you can try Smile Actives at home or anywhere, anytime. Smile Actives offers a safe and an affordable alternative to those expensive whitening procedures. You see, I've had past experience with these whitening agents, and I gotta tell you, I hated it. It causes these zingers afterwards. It's really uncomfortable. And I'm a big coffee drinker, and so I hate to say it, your teeth get stained. But that's why it's so important to use Smile Actives, because it brings you a bright smile, and a bright smile makes a good impression. Smile Actives makes a teeth whitening gel that can simply be added to your toothpaste every time that you brush your teeth. So there's no change in your routine, there's no extra time, and there's no messy strips, trays, or lights. Simply add Smile Actives Pro Whitening Gel to your regular toothpaste. It's been formulated with polyclean technology to boost stain removal and deliver active whitening ingredients into teeth's grooves and crannies so that you get better whitening. 97% of Smile Actives users in a clinical trial reported up to 6 shades whiter on average. Listen to what I just said, up to 6 shades whiter on average, and all within 30 days. I mean, that's the kind of trial that I like. So what are you waiting for? Start getting comments on your whiter, brighter smile in just days. So visit smileactives.com/Cohen today to receive a special buy one, get one free offer with auto delivery, plus free shipping and handling. That's smileactives.com/Cohen. Terms and conditions apply. See site for details.
Basically movable to get them out of Trump's camp, which would just be absolutely catastrophic for his electoral chances. And Rick said that they are seeing in their numbers, they saw movement related to the conviction, that it did have an impact. And he also said that he thinks we're going to get a sort of inverse of what we had in 2016. 2016, there were a lot of people who were quietly planning to vote for Trump, but wouldn't tell a pollster that. Rick said that he believes, and I tend to agree with him, that there's a lot of people now who are probably telling pollsters they are going to vote for Trump, and they're secretly planning on not, because they don't want to be out of the mainstream of where they live. If they're in a red area, if their neighbors are MAGA, they don't want to be running around telling people, oh yeah, I'm not going to vote for Trump, I'm going to vote for Biden. I'm not going to vote for Trump, I'm going to stay home, or I'm going to leave President blank on my ballot. They're going to tell people, it's peer pressure. They're going to tell people, hey, yeah, oh yeah, Trump all the way, MAGA. And then when they get into the secrecy of the voting booth, they're going to have a different answer. So that's why I'm inclined to agree with you, Michael, that I do believe that the actual election results will be far worse for Trump than the polls are indicating. I do believe that there's a lot of people that are exhausted with him, disgusted with him, and they just want to move on. And they're not necessarily going to say so. They're not going to answer that necessarily when they've got a pollster in front of them. There's also a lot of junk polls, garbage polls. We could go on and on about that. But follow the actual election results. And the one that I like to point to is the special election to replace George Santos a couple months ago, where Trump was not on the ballot. I'll grant you that. But you can't get much more of a pro-Trump MAGA's, avatar for Trump than George Santos. And the fact that you still had his shadow, and he wasn't on the ballot either, but the fact that you had his shadow hanging over it, and that you then had that district, which had gone Republican, polls indicated that it was going to probably go Republican, and that it went to Tom Suozzi, and not by a little, but by a healthy margin, in a suburban purple to tinging red district of the sort that Trump needs to win in November in Long Island. Which, and just so everybody gets it, and you and I know this living here in New York, Long Island is not liberal. It's not. It never has been. It's gone Dem sometimes, but it's not a liberal place. For that to go so solidly over to a Dem in the environment we're currently in, I think that was a big tell. If Trump and his people can't win in a district like that, they're in trouble this fall. So I do believe that. I think the conviction moved the needle a bit. And I believe that like I said, I talked about this on my Substack this morning, and I also on the podcast that just dropped last night. I believe that the January 6th cases are going to maybe not go to trial this year, but even preliminary hearings in the DC case could bring to public light a lot of facts, exhibits, and witnesses that we're going to see some very interesting trial before the trial moments in that DC case between now and election day. I feel pretty confident about that. And I think that's going to continue that erosion of Trump's support. The hardcore MAGA people aren't going to leave him.
No.
You don't need them to, though. You just need another 10% of his support to go away. And suddenly he will have trouble carrying any swing state.
Yeah. So I already see that as taking place. Even before the DC case, before Judge Chutkin, I see it already took place as a result of this campaign finance business record fraud case. And I'm going to tell you my reasons why. And I've used this example before, so to those listeners that have heard it before, I apologize, but I think it makes the point. If you divide Republicans, Democrats, and independents, each one with 100 million, right? And it's not true. There are a few more Democrats than Republicans. There's less independents than Republicans, whatever it might be. Just give them each 100 million. We have already learned, and it's not just yesterday, but we have learned for months now that there is a percentage of Republicans that despise Donald so much they will not vote for him under any circumstance whatsoever.
Right.
And I think that number now, as a result of the 34 felony convictions, is somewhere around 30%. That is an whopping number for any candidate. 30% of your own party
you can't do it.
Will not
you can't win
for you. You cannot win right off the bat.
No.
On top of that, between what's going on now with Roe v. Wade, between what's going on with the sort of racist comments coming from Donald about how now black people appreciate him and understand him because he's in the sneaker business. That is a whopper, especially to black women, right? To black women. The black women hate him because of what he's doing regarding the overturning of Roe and taking credit for it, and the mifepristone fight and the IVF fight. And then on top of it, to be racist and to say that you understand me, one, because now I'm a felon, which again it's so overbroad and racist in its nature. But on top of that, You all understand me because I'm in the sneaker business. I mean, it is absolutely batshit crazy. It's bewildering. He has also lost a major portion of the independent vote as a result of those two instances.
I think so.
As an example,
I do.
I don't think that this is going to be a close race. He wants to keep it close. Media wants to keep it close because
they do.
They do. Glued to the TV, and they still make their advertising dollars because this is going to be a very contentious race, and it's become like reality TV.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. Which is, and that's the thing, to go back to your earlier comment, a lot of the crazy stuff he's saying, it would be very entertaining if he had just stayed on reality TV, right? Like going on some sort of random rant about sharks or about putting dishes in your washing machine or whatever he said and all this other stuff that he spouts out. That would be hilarious if he were on a show on Bravo or something, or if he were back on The Apprentice, but it's not so hilarious when it's our actual country that's at stake. Like you actually have to get in there and run the government, and you're supposed to be the president for everybody. Like, no, then it's not funny anymore. I mean, it would be nice if he could have just stayed where he was.
I mean, this to me would be funnier if it was on South Park. Not even on reality television, because even reality television, as stupid as it could be at times, there's some interesting stuff comes out of reality TV.
Sure,
this is just so batshit crazy. He wants to. First of all, I always thought washing machines had to do with your clothes, not your dishes. But what the hell?
Whatever he said, I don't even know what he said.
Let me ask you this then, because you were a former prosecutor.
Yeah,
Trump is being sentenced on July 11th. In your opinion, how likely is the former president to spend some time behind bars?
I still think that it's more likely than not that he actually will do some prison time. I don't think it's going to be a lot. I've still been thinking that it's somewhere around kind of the it's going to be somewhere in the 18 to 24, maybe 30-month time frame. We're talking like a year and a half, 2 years. It would be. I mean, as you know, it would be. It would be.
Yeah, I do know.
Now, and then will that be? And then one of the other questions there is that actually going to be at a facility? And I believe the answer is going to be yes. I think there is a possibility, maybe it's like 1/3, that you're going to see it be some kind of house arrest or something. But I actually believe that the logistical hurdles to incarcerating him are not nearly as high as the mainstream media folks like to make it out to be. They're not nothing, but there's a lot of facilities upstate. New York's a large place once you leave the city. There's a lot of land up there. There's a lot of facilities up there. The facilities are large. They're spread out. Can you find some place where there's some other building to put him in, surrounded by his Secret Service detail? Absolutely. This is a solvable problem. That's a logistical problem that you spend a couple of weeks on and you write up a memo and you execute it. That's not something that should stop us from having him be incarcerated. Now, I don't think that Judge Merchan is going to fall for a lot of the sort of hand-wringing around that. And I think he's just going to play it straight. That part of it also is how you look at the record of the person involved, right? Mm-hmm. And you're supposed to anyway. And what's fair game here is all of the other stuff that Trump has done. So this is his first personal brush with the criminal system, but he's got the violations of the gag order in this case. Plus, he's got all of his brushes with the New York AG's office and the tax fraud case that the Manhattan DA's office brought successfully against the Trump Organization and Alan Weisselberg. All of that is part of the record that the Judge Merchan's going to be looking at there. And I think a fair analysis of all of that is going to be, he may be a first-time offender of this particular criminal statute, but he is not a first-time offender, so to speak, of things having to do with business fraud. And if you look at that, if you look at it with that lens, He is a repeat recidivist offender who has shown no remorse, no contrition. I think that Judge Merchan, I'd say it's probably like 60%, maybe 60%, maybe a little bit higher than that, does end up imposing an actual prison sentence. I might be wrong, but that's where I think this goes.
I think Merchan is sort of in a very interesting place because I ended up getting 36 months plus 36 months of supervised release, a 6-year sentence as a first-time offender in anything. In fact, the only other thing I ever had in my entire life that had anything to do with law enforcement was in 1985. I got a speeding ticket in New Jersey. I had one speeding ticket my whole life.
You only had one speeding ticket your whole life?
My entire life, 1985. I was heading back
How
to
did you
college.
do that? That's really good.
Because I don't speed. Right?
Because you don't speed.
Right. It's very simple.
Yeah.
I have never failed to pay my taxes on time. I have never asked for an extension. I've never been audited, not in the cash business. All the money was in Capital One Bank, which happens to be located at the base of the building that I live in. I accepted responsibility. I didn't put the system through, and we all know the reason why. They were threatening to file an 80-page indictment. I had 48 hours to make this decision. Either you accept the responsibility or we file an 80-page indictment that includes your wife. I chose to accept the responsibility. I made my statements. I took responsibility for it, and I was sentenced. How could Trump possibly avoid a sentence, based upon the same thing? In part, my sentence was a direct result of campaign finance violations.
That was
which his own administration, his own Justice Department acknowledged that, which is why you had guys like Jeffrey Berman, speaking with Bill Barr, and Bill Barr wanted him to whitewash the entire case and get rid of the campaign finance violations and only hold me for the other stuff. But I had already pled to it. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that really shows that our entire Department of Justice, I hate to say it, needs an overhaul. And it gives Donald the ability to make the statements that we all know are true, that the system is not fair. I think Merchan has to ensure, being the Solomonian type of judge that he is, it has to be fair to not just him, meaning Donald Trump, U.S. citizen, not just to him, Donald Trump, former president, but Donald Trump, felon. I think it has to be fair and equal. Hey, let me then move on and ask you this. The Supreme Court decision on Trump's immunity could come as soon as, I don't know, today. I mean, it should have already happened. The case could have a very significant impact on how former presidents will be held to account for any criminal offenses that they undertake while they're in office. How do you see Trump's immunity bid working out?
Yeah, so this was what I actually got up super early this morning and cranked out a piece that I just sent on my Substack, and then I talked about it on my podcast a little bit too.
Tell my listeners about your new podcast. One that
sure. So you're hearing it here first. Michael's going to be joining me, which is wonderful. I think we're aiming for the week that should come out on July 10th. I think is when that episode will drop. Yeah, that'll come out right around the time of the sentencing. That's going to be awesome. The podcast is called Taking Down Trump, same name as my book and my Substack. And you can find it wherever you listen to podcasts. We've had a lot of really awesome guests so far. I mentioned Rick Wilson. We had Stephanie Miller on, we had Glenn Kirshner on, and then we've got coming up, we've got Michael, we've got Joy Reid coming on the show soon. It's going to be a really killer lineup coming up, and we're really excited by the reception of it. We hit the top 50 already. It's been a lot of fun. So,
well, good, and I'm looking forward to it. So let me go back to the question. How do you see
on the immunity? Yeah. So the way I see it is this: I think we're going to see a really frustrating, but not. My bet is it's going to be a frustrating but not completely devastating decision. I don't think Trump's going to get exactly what he wants here, which is just blanket immunity. you're free and clear. You get a get out of jail free card because these things happened while you were in office. I don't think he's going to get that. I think that's probably what Alito and Thomas would do. I don't think there's enough votes on the court to get that. And I'm saying this based on reading the transcript of the oral argument that was held a couple months ago. I see this as being a frustrating split decision where you've got pretty much every justice will probably write their own opinion, but the majority opinion, I think, all of the things being equal, it'll probably be John Roberts who authors it. And they're going to come up with kind of the middle ground of saying, well, if it was an official act of the office of the president, then there's immunity. And if it wasn't an official act of the office of the president, it was the act of a candidate, it was the act of a private citizen, then those things are not immune, even if they occurred during his term. And then they're going to remand it back down to Judge Chutkan in DC to say, okay, you now need to determine, Judge, which of all the things the government's alleging, which ones of those things are official acts and which ones of them aren't. Now, here's the problem for Trump. That could be a very, very, very detailed analysis that results in the judge saying, great, I want briefing, I want evidence, and we're going to have a hearing. And that hearing is not just going to be like, oh, it's one afternoon to determine whether or not evidence is admissible. This could be weeks. It could be months. You could see some of the tip-top witnesses in this matter actually take the stand to make the determination about whether or not it was an official act. Because what does that mean? Okay, is it part of his job versus was it as a candidate? Well, I think somebody that could probably shed some light on that would be Mike Pence, saying like, well, we were in this meeting and we were talking about, oh, were you also talking about like trade with China in the same thing? No, this clearly we were having a meeting to talk about how he was going to try to stay in office.
And Bill Barr and Kelly and
Bill Barr, all of
the whole administration. Bring in Jared, bring in Ivanka. I mean, for God's sakes, bring in everybody, right. And that's what they would.
But right, and the government, if they're smart, now put this aside as to whether or not they're going to do the right thing here. If I were on Jack Smith's team, I would seize this opportunity with both hands and just go. Don't hold back. Actually put up some of your best witnesses, some of your best exhibits. We know that DOJ has DMs that Trump did on Twitter from his phone during January 6th. We know this. It's been in the media. We need to see some of those. I think that those things are going to come out. I believe that there's a good chance these things will then come out in a public hearing that could be quite lengthy. Just one example I drew in one of the things I wrote was, if we remember what it looked like when they had the hearing, as they called it, on Fani Willis down in Georgia with that whole thing. Mm-hmm. That hearing took like 3 weeks and had like dozens of witnesses, hundreds of exhibits. Now take that and multiply it by how much bigger the J6 case is, as opposed to who took Fani to lunch or who did she take to lunch or when did her relationship with so-and-so start, whatever. Like this is like the whole thing. Things that happened before the election and then the entire period from the election all the way through the aftermath of J6. They're going to have to walk through each of those things and determine, was this an act of the president or was this the act of the candidate? And that could be very lengthy. And having that all come out on the public record with the media reporting on it every day during the home stretch of the election. Woo. Yeah. So what I landed on for, as I talked about this on my show and in my Substack, is that this could be a be careful what you wish for situation for Donald Trump. He might win that decision, but lose greatly.
Yeah. I was going to say the same thing, that once again, the Mandarin Mussolini stuck his little foot up his big ass. And I say that because somewhere along the line, one of these idiots that are around him saying, if you could get the Supreme Court, and they owe you, right, because you created this new Supreme Court, right, if you can get immunity that they cannot charge you for these crimes, okay? And I can see Trump head spinning. This could be great. We don't have to go through this. I would get immunity, blanket immunity on anything that I do. And here's where they're making a mistake. So let's say hypothetically that the Supreme Court comes down and they say that, yes, a president has a blanket immunity on anything he does while he's the president of the United States that is in furtherance of the office. Okay. You and I will both agree that it's a fucked up decision, but let me tell you where, all right, Von Schitzenpants is screwed up here. He's not the president of the United States. Joe Biden is. Joe Biden could then be empowered to turn around and say, well, you know, Donald Trump still has national security secrets that are somewhere hidden in Mar-a-Lago. He has provided information to our adversaries on this top secret information. We know that to be true. I then, in my official capacity as president of the United States, declare that this man is a threat to the national security of the United States of America. And I hereby order SEAL Team 6 to immediately converge upon Mar-a-Lago, take him into custody, and we try him for treason like we did the Rosenbergs. And execute him. Take him in the back and put one right in his beaner. He could do that. He would. And
legally, what's to stop Biden at that point? That is the thing. Legally, it's like if you create that precedent, I mean, you know, I think that
I know it sounds
he
crazy.
will really have miscalculated. Yeah.
Right. I know it sounds crazy and Biden wouldn't do it. And this is only a South Park scenario. But again, as you said, be careful what you wish for. It might come true, right? Biden would have, for a period of at least 7 months, the 4 months leading up to the election and the 3 months thereafter, until January 20th, he would have absolute immune rights to do whatever he wanted, as long as he's claiming it is for the national security of the United States. And then you would get people like myself. I go on MSNBC and say, yeah, I have said it. Donald Trump is a danger to the United States and to our national security. When he starts talking about the number of nuclear missiles that are on a nuclear sub to our adversaries, that's a fucking problem.
That's a problem. Or to anybody, it can then get from one person to another. Like he shared things that should never, ever, ever be shared outside the White House.
And hence why I would be A-OK for Biden to then employ his immunity that the Supreme Court of the United States gave to him. Could I, just to continue with the Supreme Court, because look, this Supreme Court today is very different than the Supreme Court we knew of yesteryear and so on. And, you know, they've yet to do anything about the criminality in their own ranks. If it doesn't make you nauseous that they're taking money from people who have cases in front of them, that they're taking all sorts of very high value trips on yachts and planes and private islands and so on. I see it as a problem. But we're hearing rumblings that there is a real fracture within the court, and that perhaps Justice Alito's absence from the court may actually have something to do with it. Can you do me a favor? Based upon all of your knowledge, and it's quite substantial, speculate for my listeners about what's going on with the court.
Yeah, it is possible that there's, you know, when we occasionally have had historians or journalists be able to provide a glimpse into what goes on the court, it's often really fascinating. There's a lot of like politicking that goes on where the judges are lobbying with one another. There are tensions on the court. You know, these things often only come out years later. I think that there is an excellent chance that there is tension going on within the court. I can't imagine that the other justices have looked kindly upon the revelations about Thomas and the $4 million plus of unreported gifts that he received, bribes that he basically received over the years. I can't imagine that they've been taking kindly to the whole thing with Alito and the flags. And that was after the possibility that Alito was the one who leaked the Dobbs opinion a couple of years ago. I think that if I were one of the other, I mean, let alone if I were one of the liberals in the court, obviously this is like, I can't even believe this is happening. But if I'm one of the other conservatives on the court, if I'm Amy Coney Barrett and I'm sitting there and I'm the most junior justice on the court and I'm going to be there for a long, long time, I've signed up for this as sort of the thing I'm going to do with the rest of my life for decades to come. And then I'm looking at these people that I'm supposed to be like ideologically friendly with, and this is the crap they're pulling. It gives what you stand for, what you believe in, if you're Barrett or Roberts or Kavanaugh, it gives it a bad name. And I think the question mark that a lot of these people are going to be facing right now is like, where do you stand on all of this? Can you actually run around making these conservative opinions, which I disagree with, but are you going to go that far and just be completely shameless with it and be taking money from people like Harlan Crow and Leonard Leo and actually stating your political views and literally running them up a flagpole during a moment of national crisis? Are you going to stand for that, or are you going to not? Roberts does have some power and sway to do something about all of this, and it may be getting exercised. One of the other legal commentators that I really love, Elie Mystal, speculated the other day on Twitter. His prediction is that he believes Alito was stripped of writing the immunity opinion and that Roberts took it for himself. And that Alito is furiously writing out a long and vitriolic concurrence, and that explains why he's been absent. And it also explains why the decision looks like it's getting delayed. We were thinking it was going to come out today. Now, as we're taping on Wednesday the 28th, it doesn't look like it anymore. I guess we'll see what happens. But I think there could be a lot of tension going on within that kind of more extreme branch of Thomas, Alito. I don't know about Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, that side, versus I think that the question mark there is like, what does that mean for Roberts? And I think Barrett's actually the most interesting one to watch right now. She did not want to go along with this immunity crap during oral argument. She expressed some major concerns with it. I don't think that the Trump people won her over. And the kicker, though, is that if you stick Roberts and Barrett with the three liberals, you can actually get some 5-4 decisions that don't go all the way to crazy town. And so I think we're going to start to see some very interesting things going on here. And while I'm at it, I'm just going to say one more thing, which is that I think the other bit of thing that needs to happen here that can help create that tension and hopefully maybe get some resolution here that we don't have just absolute rampant corruption is that the Senate Judiciary Committee needs to stop thinking about drafting legislation that will never pass because it won't get past the filibuster and it won't get past the Republican House, and start holding hearings, issue subpoenas, create a special subcommittee, put Senator Sheldon Whitehouse in charge of it because he has shown a lot more chutzpah in trying to get something done on this, and actually hold these people to account. Bring them back to the Senate and have them answer for their actions, just like any other employee of the federal government would be, having been accused and with tons of evidence and their own admissions in some cases of this kind of wrongdoing.
Yeah. So let me just say, I agree with you completely. The only criticism that I have is your pronunciation of the word chutzpah, right? It's very important. It's like you're clearing your throat.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
All right. If you're going to use the word, you got to do
it right. You got to do it right.
There you go. But it's more than just even, the Supreme Court and their delay in terms of this decision. We're also seeing delays coming from Eileen Cannon in the stolen classified documents case and so on. Look, this is a real problem. The way I see it, for the Department of Justice, it undermines the confidence that Americans have in the entire system. Donald has certainly shown many that with a few dollars, and when I say a few, I'm talking about more than just a few, you can actually delay justice. Now, the question becomes, is justice delayed, justice denied? Well, one thing I can tell you for certain, the answer to that, as it related to the Manhattan District Attorney case, the 34 criminal convictions, no. Would I have liked to have seen that take place a year earlier? Sure. Was Bragg ready to bring it? No. Did Bragg bring a great case? Clearly, the answer is yes. It's not a question of whether Michael Cohen thinks so or Tristan Snell thinks so or any of these idiot pundits that you see on television, ranging from, the Georgetown professor, the GW professor, what's his name? Jonathan Turdley, right? Turd, Turdley, Turdley, right? I mean, the answer is no, right? Whether you like the guy or you don't like the guy, the law is the law, the facts are the facts, and juries have spoken. My disappointment with Judge Eileen Cannon is that she's so in the bag for Trump that not only is she making an asshole out of herself, but worse, she's undermining people's confidence in the system. And that's bad. But I do want to bring, since we're talking about people and so on, the Justice Department is due to file a brief with the High Court on Wednesday urging Steve Bannon's immediate jailing. Right? This is long over fucking due. But meanwhile, what's going on too? You got MAGA Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, is putting himself on the line to write an amicus brief to the Supreme Court backing Steve Bannon's appeal. What do you think is the most likely outcome for Bannon? And should this now trigger Democrats to turn around and move for his ousting?
I think that the ultimate outcome of the Bannon case is going to be that Bannon goes and serves his prison term for contempt of Congress. Like it's open and shut. This is not controversial. It's like, okay, did you get a subpoena? Oh, you did. Okay. Did you show up? Oh, you didn't. Okay. It's not hard. This is not rocket science. The fact that this has taken so long, we could go on and on about sort of like I think with a lot of these things, the weaknesses in our system with like everything's got to then be dealt with like this brief and it's a schedule and it's this old rules of this very gentlemanly process for how to handle appeals is not suited to the lawfare world that the Trumpians have brought about. But that's that's a much bigger conversation. I think that Bannon's going to prison. And I think the Democrats are content to let Mike Johnson flail around and be ineffective. I don't think that they're going to try to get rid of him. I think we're kind of baked into the idea that the House isn't going to get much done. And it'll just be one more thing that they use to run against Republicans in the fall and try to get a Democratic House.
It makes perfect sense. So let me just add one additional thought and question to this. So Steve Bannon, let's say, is incarcerated. I think it's 4 months, which is before the election. Alex Jones's InfoWars filed for bankruptcy, was shut down. It's being sold off to pay the Sandy Hook families that he lied about. Will that deal a major propaganda blow to Republicans? I mean, remembering that these are two of their biggest mouths that are being silenced. Do you think that the right will suffer without them? And where will their people go?
The one thing I would say is that they silenced themselves. That's the one thing I would say. I know what you're saying, but they silenced themselves. Like Jones did this to himself, and Bannon did this to himself. All Bannon had to do was show up and give a bunch of non-answers to questions or plead the fifth. He could have shown up and pled the fifth. He could have shown up and said, I don't know, I don't remember. He could have bumbled his way through that day. Like the fact that he was like, no, I'm going to die on this hill. It's like, great, you're headed to prison, buddy. That's how it works. You can't not show up when the Senate or the House tells you to show up for something. It doesn't work that way. We all have to play by the same rules. And Jones, I mean, there's a special ring of hell for him. I don't say that lightly. Like, there is a special place in hell for that man, for what he did to those families. It is absolutely horrific. 26 and 7-year-olds were killed. And he said that they didn't exist and that their parents were actors, and effectively unleashed his horde of crazy fans to go dox and harass those people. No, he deserves everything that has come for him. And I do think that losing those two people, they did it to themselves. And the timing just happens to be serendipitous for those of us who care about democracy and care about America, because I do think losing those two people will deal a blow. That said, they have managed to throw hundreds of millions of dollars over the last 8 years at creating a growing army of additional content creators. So, for every one that implodes by breaking the law or defaming people, there's sadly a whole bunch more to take their place. We're just going to have to keep fighting.
Yeah. I mean, these Sandy Hook families deserve every single penny. I mean,
every single penny.
If only for just the doxing. Look, I am currently somebody that is being doxed by this far right. They're doing all sorts of crazy shit, to me. And it is, God, what's the right word for it? It's God awful. I mean, it is unbelievable, whether it's the calls in the middle of the night, sending pizzas to the house, sending fake documents and things like that. I mean, it's really overwhelming. And these families who have lost so much, the expression, when you lose your child, you lose your future. These families deserve everything and more. And Alex Jones and Steve Bannon and Donald and all of these MAGA morons that keep standing up for him and keep going down one by one by one. I'm with you. I'm with you, Tristan. They deserve every single thing that they're getting.
All of it.
Okay. Final question is the mea culpa. The hour goes by quick. Last I heard, Republicans are actually floating the idea of Trump's VP being Tulsi Gabbard. What do you think about that? And what's your thoughts on running?
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah.
I had not heard that. Look, I think that if they just want to activate more Crazy Town, she's probably a good fit. I actually can see how the thought process on this worked now that you're saying it, Michael. It means that Trump wanted to pick Kristi Noem, and then after the dog thing, he couldn't. And then he was trying to find somebody else who's like, he literally, I bet you he's trying to think, I'm going to pick a woman. I'm going to make sure she looks good on camera, blah, blah, blah. And then basically like Tulsi Gabbard was like the understudy for Noem. Now Noem's gone. She imploded. So they're putting Gabbard in there. I can see how that would work, but I also kind of see it as like, well, you're sort of, Gabbard will basically be kind of like an anti-vaxxer Sarah Palin. It's like, I just don't know how that's going to work as somebody who's going to look like they're a serious person. His base won't care. They'll be all in for it. But I don't think that she's a voice that's going to play well with, say, like independent or Republican leaning soccer moms in the suburbs. Because anybody who's already like a crazy anti-vaxxer is already not voting for Joe Biden, probably. So Gabbard doesn't really help them there. It just doubles down on the crazy. I just don't see somebody who's more of an independent or moderate thinking that Gabbard looks like a responsible person to put in charge of anything. Yeah. So go ahead.
It's just a thought. Just a thought. So look, Tristan, thank you for joining me on Mea Culpa. Thanks for making us all a little smarter today. Appreciate it. Looking forward to joining you on your podcast as well. You want to just one more time, Taking Down Trump podcast, same name as his book.
Taking Down Trump podcast, same title as the book, which is still on sale. I think is discounted now on Amazon. And then we've got the Taking Down Trump Substack, which you can get at tristansnell.com. If you want to get the book, that's at takingdowntrump.com. Podcast is available everywhere you listen to podcasts.
Amen. And I look forward to seeing you. Tristan, thank you again. And I will definitely be having you back because there's so much going on.
Talk to you soon, Michael. Thanks so much.